means of providing for their livelihood. So people don't know that history. It's been lifted up as this, almost holier than thou.
Rising above the basic carnal.
Yes, the whole
energy.
Dualism, mind and body separation. And I think if people understood the history of celibacy, they would understand why it should never have been made a requirement for ordination. So that's why we believe whatever a person's calling is, whether it's to celibacy, understanding celibacy is a gift that some have, or whether they're called to live in married life.
And you're married.
I am married.
You have a husband and 4 children.
And 4 children, yes.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting. I have served as a chaplain for over 20 years. And so it's been an interesting process being a chaplain. And I have to say, for most patients and families I visit with, they have had no problem with me as a woman. My most interesting experience was visiting a Catholic woman, and I was 8 months pregnant with my first child, and she said, I didn't know nuns could be pregnant. And I remember thinking, I'm not a nun, but I am pregnant, and it was just too much to explain, and I graciously excused myself and thought, this is where people have trouble pigeonholing me because they only know priests and nuns in the Catholic tradition. So it's been an interesting walk.
And it's hard, I imagine, for a lot of people within the Catholic faith to imagine a priest as a woman, and just because it hasn't been there before.
Right.
And so will you call yourself? I mean, you're not going to call yourself Father Mary Kay. So what are you going to call yourself?
So this is an issue we've grappled with, and what we've decided is that because most ordained are called Reverend, we will use the title of Reverend. But I love what Patricia Friesen says. She says, the only time you can call me Bishop is when I'm in liturgy. But outside of that, I'm Patricia, and she will actually correct you. So I will very much emulate that as well. Reverend, I think, is way too tall a title for most anyone, but it's the understood title for someone who has been ordained. So I will use it for title purposes only.
Right. And then the traditional robes and dress. I mean, will you be wearing the collar? I mean, how will people do they need to know to recognize you in that way?
Well, it's interesting because we're a group of women, and we are using very much the democratic process, and I think that's the thing I want to clarify as well. We are not simply adopting the hierarchical mode. We are promoting a priesthood of servanthood. And so all of our structures, if you will, are non-hierarchical. They are very much, we talk about concentric circles. So everyone has equal say in decisions that are made. So one of the questions that has been a point of discussion has been, how do we identify ourselves? And some women feel very strongly that, we should be wearing, clericals and do exactly as the men have done. And there are those of us, myself included, who feel, I understand that, but I am not someone who could see myself wearing black with the collar. So I think maybe pink with the collar, or something less distinct. So claiming the role, but in a different way. So it's still a point of discussion among our women. And so there are those who wear the black shirt with the collar, and there are those, I actually have a white shirt with a white collar, which I can use for different services, say a funeral or a wedding, if I so choose.
Now, your family, I imagine, has to be supportive of this, of this journey you've gone on. And I think the one thing we haven't really touched upon is, you could have decided, I'm going to leave the Catholic Church. I'm going to go and I'm going to become Episcopalian, or I'm going to, and you could have done that. But instead, you said, I'm Catholic. And did you feel a calling? Was that what happened?
So when I got my master's in pastoral ministry in 1985, it was a huge piece of my discernment. Many of my peers were becoming Episcopalian or Lutheran, and they said to me, Mary Kay, why? Why are you staying in the church? I mean, obviously things aren't happening. And I said, I want my presence to speak louder than my absence. And that sounds very idealistic, but later I tried going to an Episcopalian church and going to a Lutheran church, and it always just felt false to me. I've been raised in a very traditional family.
It's your culture. It's your religion as well as your
Exactly,
culture. Okay.
exactly. And I always say I was raised by religious. My mom wanted to be a nun. My dad wanted to be a priest. And so we were raised in a very traditional Catholic home, not only going to church every Sunday, but all holy days. Many people haven't heard of rosary rallies or all-night vigils. We actually have a chapel in my parents' home where they have 8 stained glass windows. And so every night we prayed the rosary, and statues, on the wall with relics. I always say instead of dressing Barbie dolls, I dressed the Infant of Prague. And there are many people who don't know what that is, but it's a very strong Catholic upbringing that when I would go to other churches and try, as much as I understood their traditions, it wasn't a lived tradition for me. And so I always felt false. So when this opportunity arose, it was just very, very clear to me. I think I've been called all my life in some ways, but never saw it as an option because I knew growing up it wasn't an option. So I think becoming a chaplain was my way of kind of sublimating the call. And it worked for many years to be a chaplain, to be doing ministry. But once I met Patricia Friesen and heard her story, it became very clear to me that this is a call of justice and that my life needs to stand in allegiance with beliefs that are of inclusion, which I think are core gospel values.
And this whole journey of yours just makes me think about Rosa Parks or different people who, truly though, but people who said, well, why can't I? Why can't I do what you're telling me I can't do? And maybe I'm the one that has to make the stand, and all of you are doing that. But I wonder, your parents being so traditional in their values with the Catholic Church, are they supportive of this journey that you're on?
Not at all. And that's been a huge source of pain for me, a huge grieving process. And I think it's why it's taken me so long I started the process in 2007. And what's good is it is a process of discernment. So simply by becoming a candidate, there is no assurance that you will be ordained, but it's a process of mentorship and discernment. And I think the biggest problem for me has been the grief that this is causing my parents. It's a very painful topic for them. We have had very difficult conversations where I end up in tears, and the good thing is I know they love me, and both of them reiterate that anytime this topic comes up. But they will say, we can in no way support what you are doing. I mean, my parents, they've been Benedictine oblates all their lives. They are members of a Marian group. We have priests who stay at my parents' house all the time and say Mass, in the living room. So I don't know what kind of advice or support they're getting, but
they're
very
also
clear.
from a generation where accepting gay people into the church is going to be incredibly challenging. And here we are in the state of Iowa with you becoming a woman priest, and gay marriage is legal, and for that generation, it's a challenge.
I think so. And in one of my conversations with my dad, I said, Dad, I really believe that the letter of the law is what's important to you, and what's important to me is the spirit of the law. And we've basically agreed to disagree, but it's more than that for them. It's a huge grief and has caused, I have 7 siblings, and I have 1 brother who will be coming to the ordination. And even 2 sisters who were initially supportive have become much less supportive, shall we say. So it's definitely a process of trying to maintain relationship